Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Jon Myer Podcast. Now, this is so cool. We're actually doing it in person in Philly. And our topic today is maximizing the benefits and value of your cloud initiatives. And some of those initiatives include not only cloud adoption, but using cloud efficiently and effectively. Now, our guests today are B. Lee from AWS. B. Lee, thanks for joining us.
Hey, nice to be here, John.
And we have Asim from CDW. Asim, man, we were doing this back in reInvent almost a year ago. Thanks for joining me again.
Always a pleasure, John.
B. Lee, let's talk about you a little bit. What is your role at AWS?
It's been 3 years. I'm a partner development manager for our worldwide public sector division.
What does a partner developer manager do at AWS?
I get to work with great partners such as CDW to help build out their AWS practice.
Asim, what are you doing at CDW?
So I'm the CTO for public sector, focused on emerging technologies, and came through the acquisition of Inquisit, and I was the CTO there, was there for a decade before that.
Before we get started on our topic, B. Lee, why don't you tell us what the relationship is like between AWS and CDW?
Most definitely. The relationship with CDW is very unique at the same time because we have over 100,000 partners, but CDW is a premier AWS partner, and I've been covering them for the past 3 years. And I think one of the unique pieces there is their ability to meet the customer wherever they are in their life cycle. Their full lifecycle capabilities with our leading platform solution is just, to me, us together, it's tough to beat, actually.
Asim, let's talk about cloud adoption because, digital transformation is always one of those hot topics, something that needs to be done before going to cloud, and then the process of doing it. I want to talk about cloud adoption as, what are some of the challenges that you might be seeing at CDW for customers, not only to adopt cloud, but to get there efficiently?
The same boring old thing which we need to do whenever we start an initiative, we have to do here again, is defining your success criteria. What do you need out of the cloud? How would you know that you've gotten there? That tends to be still the primary challenge for a lot of organizations. So, of course, sometimes people take a tech-first approach, which is exciting and fun and fast. And then you get to a point in there where you're like, okay, so I got all the tech stuff done. Now what? And it sometimes becomes evident that you didn't sync with the business needs ahead of time necessarily. So even before one gets in the question of, am I doing well? It's like, did you agree on a criteria? Did you reach across your relevant teams and stakeholders and define what success would look like? So all of you could work hand in hand and march accordingly towards that success. So now, when it comes down to you've already decided you're going to start adopting the cloud, the balance that people tend to struggle most with is, do I optimize the most or do I move fast, right? And therein lies kind of the difficulty of saying, well, I want to be an example for the world. I want to be the best. So I'm going to keep everything on-prem till I have the perfect way to show the world how great my execution is or my team's execution is. And that's admirable. That's admirable to reach for the stars. What that ends up doing is often you're looking for that perfect path, and that ends up requiring so much research, so much then time and effort that you don't get to start, and technology keeps moving. So anybody who's looking to make a move and hasn't started in some time, rule of thumb is if you started planning 6 months ago and you haven't actually done anything, you haven't done a proof of concept, maybe you need to look at realistically what your resources are from your team and what your goals are, and if there is a happy medium. Because in particular, when it comes to cloud adoption, perfect should never become the enemy of good. So it's continual improvement that we evangelize, and that tends to be the best path for a lot of folks.
Bailey, it sounds like, Asim, you're saying that cloud adoption, slow cloud adoption is actually a challenge, right? It's one of the most problems that can be in there where you're trying to be too perfect and get in there where you're trying to analyze and do the optimization. You're trying to, fine tune your business application, maybe shrink it, refactor it before you get to the cloud. Are you seeing these things?
Yeah, and it's funny, as Asim was mentioning that I've been in cloud since I've been out of college for like the last 11 years, and I can't tell you how many times I've seen customers want the nice, big, shiny whatever, and it just sits there. I'm talking about millions of dollars, and it does nothing. And to Asim's point, if you don't dive deep on the why from your key stakeholders and really work backwards from that, you're wasting numerous cycles and valuable time and just money at the end of the day. You have to have a business case and a business driver. And again, that's one of the things that makes CDW to me so unique, because it's already a relationship there. I mean, a lot of us, our first laptops, our first mouse pads, you got it from CDW, and the fact that they can actually help usher you into this cloud landscape as a trusted advisor. Hey, you can just call up, hey, I need help with this. And they can break it down in layman's terms and then tag us in at the same time. I mean, you have to fully assess.
That's funny you say where you got your first piece of hardware and mouse from CDW. I'll give you guys a little story. When I started out in tech, I worked for an internet hosting company, and I was racking, stacking, and building servers and putting them in there. We ordered all our hardware from CDW. We ordered all our stuff from CDW. I had a direct connect to my representative. I was always on the phone with him, and literally we had our stuff almost drop shipped the next day. That was my first interaction with CDW. So I just a little bit of back. That's how long I've been at it.
Thank you for your business, John. we wouldn't be here without you. And I'm sure your rep would appreciate a call once in a while, even now.
100%.
Actually, he took us to one of the raceways, NASCAR speed up in the Poconos. He came up. He's like, hey, listen, we're going to take you guys all there. And it was my first time actually watching NASCAR on the speedway. Wow. I've actually driven them on the track, but I've never watched it. That's a story for another time. Bailey, I want to go back to a little bit more around not only the cloud adoption, the migration, and handling some of those things. One of the things that a lot of companies kind of go into is analysis by paralysis, right? You go into this and you really want to make sure that this is perfect. You get all the stakeholders, everybody involved. 6 months, you haven't done anything. You haven't moved. What would be your recommendation in order to actually efficiently adopt and do cloud initiatives?
Yeah, again, when you have a real business driver and a business case, that usually comes with timelines and timeframes. And I think that's what, together with CDW and AWS and our bench of cloud advisors, we help you keep true to that timeline. Because again, if you have a real business case, there's negatives that can happen if you don't meet that. So you really find out when you're working on some of these large migrations, if, for example, you said we're 6 months and still no action. Was it a real business driver? Was it a real thing? Or are we just chasing something here? I know Asim can attest to this. We have a couple of deals in the pipeline right now what we're just talking about. But Asim, anything you want to add on to that piece from your perspective?
Yeah. So, I mean, anybody who's been hanging around and just not making progress, your resources and your goals are not likely matched up. And also likely the fact that whatever driver is supposedly behind it is maybe not that strong, because, a whole lot can get done at the 11th hour. That's not what we're suggesting. But even if you're just not getting a push from your stakeholders saying, deliver the value that you promised to deliver, right? And you're allowed to kind of linger a little there, then was that a real driver? Something to be looked at. And then accepting that this, like anything else in life, is incremental progress. and take the first step, make it happen, and have a clear path on where you're going to go once you take the first step. Follow what would free up resources from your current team, right? Because you're obviously, if you're not in the cloud today, which I mean, the value is so obvious it boggles the mind. Why aren't you? It's a question of how much and in what fashion are you utilizing the cloud. But if you're not in the cloud today, or you still have a substantial presence on-prem, you're obviously spending a whole lot of time on undifferentiated work, right? Maintenance of your infrastructure, just polishing that rust off, which is going to form again tomorrow morning, that rust. And you're just continuing to polish that rust. And it feels very noble. And we've all done that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't add value.
Yeah.
That is just keeping things in a state of good repair. And more importantly, having your team's resources be devoted to that rust polishing, as opposed to real value add for the organization. So look at, if you've been stuck and you're looking for the perfect solution, step back and realize that you likely don't have the resources for the perfect solution. So to gain those resources, look at your team's operational efforts, look at what can be removed and lifted to the cloud. So then you reclaim that operational time back. And now you have more resources. So you have more resources. You have hopefully a better calibration of your goals. And you aggressively move forward with, this is my first step.
And Jon, I just want to add a piece to that, because I see this so many times with customers. You don't have to get to that point alone. And if you really want to add value to those wasted cycles, take a look at who's in these meetings and for how long on your own, and add up those salaries per hour and how much you're actually wasting, and what you can do for the same person that sent you your laptop, your mouse, maybe an hour call with a trusted advisor. Just get to 70% of what you think you need to go and save that time. And we can come together to actually build out a comprehensive plan for you. You don't have to go with this alone.
Billy, do you think one of the common challenges are that companies don't have the proper skill sets to do the cloud adoption, and they have to admit that they don't have it and they need somebody else to help them, though?
100%. And it's a moment of vulnerability for us all. I mean, we have over 200 plus services. So no one is going to be the expert. That's why it takes a team, and that's what we're here for. And that's one of the, especially when you do have a business case and you don't identify it, and that time is just ticking and you're just sitting on it. Asim can attest how many individuals come to us in the 25th hour and we're like, whoa, so you need us to do this by this time? So
awesome. I want to jump in there real quick, because he actually touched on that, is having the proper business case. We talked about having the tech, the shiny tech of going to the cloud, right? The cloud is cool. We've played around, we've sort of gotten there, and having the proper business case of going there, admitting that and being vulnerable that you don't have the skill sets, starting those conversations early. And I think one of the other things that, cloud has been around for 15 plus years, right? Sure. What are we, 18 now or something like that? And one of the biggest things is that companies that want to go to the cloud, they don't understand why they want to go to the cloud. They don't understand. They know they have to, right? They don't know what should they go there. But the other thing is actually using cloud for what it was meant to be, right? Not building this, another data center within the cloud, but utilizing it for the elasticity, the cost effectiveness, and the periodic usage, not always on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. First of all, Billy, breaks my heart that you don't know those 200 services and out, because I'll just be honest. We were counting on you. So
when they all fit on one page really nicely, I knew them. I could understand and going. But once they reached over to that one, Werner Vogels came onto the thing. We were at 200 plus 10, and you asked for it, was his response.
And fair response. But coming back to your and that those make an exceptional Lego box, right? Those 210 services. So they can be overwhelming, and they are wonderful and exciting to put together in the right workflow and say this is the magic you can make happen. So there is, but try not to use all 210 is what I also hope many customers would consider. More is not always better in this case, and being better at them is what matters, which I guess is going to bring us back to the team expertise. A conversation is, you got to have the right balance of advice from folks who do this all day long, people like my colleagues perhaps, and you got to have passionate learners within your own team to take ownership of that, and you need both for it to be the most effective recipe. Now, I will commit here, say, for a second and say, as much as I completely agree with you that cloud should not be a replacement for a data center, I will also say that if your start, and I will be very clear on that, if your start in the cloud is it mostly being a data center replacement, if that's the way you get started, I do not consider that as a sin. Just don't accept that to be your endpoint in the cloud, right? Because again, if you can take away all the work that you were doing on-prem maintaining your data center, and you simply remove the lower layers of that, migrate yourself as is mostly to the cloud. And yes, you're getting a data center replacement by and large, but you already got rid of God knows 60% of the workload of maintaining that infrastructure, right? Obviously, you want to keep the virtuous cycle going. You want to keep moving up on the value chain and reducing undifferentiated work, but one way or another moving to some sort of serverless setup. But again, don't let be your goal day one and be sitting there and wasting your team's cycles, God knows 50-60% of their effort into just maintaining this data center. So jump in, get started, accept the fact that your first step may look a lot like a data center, but with a lot less operational overhead. And your team is familiar with that way of working as well, by the way. They're used to the data center. Now you've given them a smarter data center-ish solution, and they can continue to adopt at their own pace, right? Those 210 services. You're not overwhelming them because there is, as our brains can only process so much change at a time. So how do you ensure that people who are most familiar with your application and your businesses, your team that is, and are passionate about you, about your mission, how do you ensure that they're the ones who feel enabled and they're the ones who feel heard and be seen as the leaders? As much as a partner comes in and helps, there is no replacement. There is no substitute for a passionate team, technical team that owns the problem, even if they don't know every technical aspect today, right? But if they are passionate about providing the service, they will drag partners like myself or whomever in and say, solve this for me because I own this with pride and I'm going to get this done right for my customers.
Awesome. I'm going to add on to that where you said, don't let the data center feeling stop you from going to the cloud.
Yeah.
But you also indicated have a plan to tackle those. And that sometimes is the issue, is that they move and other shiny objects come on, and now they have to focus on that, and now they've doubled their cost. So as long as they have a plan, the other thing is managing the cloud environment, managing your on-premise environment, and managing the aspect of the migration. Billy, I want to talk a little bit more about managing it. What are some of the challenges customers might face when they're trying to managing not only their AWS, but their hybrid type environments?
It's just the variables. We're all aware of the recycle phases, and it's just customers' luck that it's failing, or it's something's about to happen. Or I've been in situations where customers were under ransom attack, like at the worst right? At the worst possible time. So these things will happen. But to answer your question, it's just to have those plans and those milestones and a plan B if something does go wrong. And that's where you can leverage partners. And that's why I said earlier, like you really don't want to go about this on your own and try to get to 100% of how this is going to go. Get as far as you can and then loop in your trusted advisors to have this conversation. Because when you do run into those certain blockers that are inevitable to happen, we can assist and leverage. We have over 100,000 partners. Asim already mentioned it. We can go through that Rolodex and help accelerate to get you back to where you need to go for that original business driver. So I don't know, Asim, if you want to add more to that, but there's no magic recipe for that one, Jon.
Well, awesome. Actually, I'm going to go to you because now we talked about the challenges, right? Cloud adoption, the effective use of it, the management aspect of it. You also touched on a little bit on how you tackle some of those, but I want to dive a little bit deeper. If I am a company looking to adopt the cloud, right? So we're going to take out the migration aspect because really you might be deploying out a new service within the cloud rather than migrating over to it. What are some of the top things that come to mind that you ask customers on how they can tackle these challenges in order to properly adopt the cloud?
So first and foremost, the question we ask is there executive support behind this, right? And on what terms? And then we figure out how does that line up to the company's objectives, right? So in the end, we end up with a charter for the project, right? This is what executives support. This is what the organization's mission is. Hence, here is the charter for this particular project that we have. Based on that, you build a core team of dreamers from within the organization, and then AWS, our own ranks, and we then come together and say, all right, so given the charter, given the resources, right, timelines, and how do we most effectively deliver against that? How do we ensure that every minute and every dollar goes towards satisfying that charter the best way possible? What resources do we have internally at the organization? Because obviously that is, as I said, the metric it's a key metric to success. How passionate is your internal team? No matter how technical they are, that's a solvable problem.
Right.
But passion is not something you can impart. So how driven are they to serve their customers' need, their end customers' need, might I add, because again, thinking about the human at the very end of that chain that's going to be interacting with the technology, and that human's experience is obviously the ultimate success metric. It doesn't matter who did what, how many, God knows, subcontractors were in there and who was working for whom. It doesn't matter. All of us, no matter what badge we wear, when we join a project, we're all working towards reducing, frustration for the human that's going to use at the very end of that chain, no matter how many, hops may be in the middle. So if we have that clarity, if we have clarity on what the charter is, we have our goal set as reducing frustration for the end user, right? And adding delight to their interaction, because that's good for everybody in the chain, no matter where you sit. Then this team of dreamers can continue utilizing, optimizing what's possible from within the organization, what's possible from, AWS, what's possible from the wide ranks at CDW, because we have about, we offer a lot. I learned recently that we lease mainframes as well, and I had to do a double take on that. I was like, come again? Tell me again, what did you say? Oh yeah, we can lease a mainframe if somebody is we're moving to the cloud, we have an old mainframe, it requires some time to move away from, and we're kind of in this catch-22. Do we invest so much into a new mainframe and kind of be locked here for another, God knows, amortizing it for another 7-10 years? And we don't have time to actually migrate, because this thing is not in a good shape, and we can just lease them a mainframe. Like, yeah, really, we can migrate everything else to AWS, lease them a mainframe, co-locate it to at a low latency circuit, boom, done. And then keep siphoning things off of that mainframe into AWS. And then one day, boom, you're done. Your lease is up, It's that possible.
Yeah.
I had trouble believing it myself, but apparently it's an easy thing to do, and we do that all the time.
Yes. You never know if you don't ask. And there's one other thing I wanted to add to that I think it's overlooked a lot, especially when you're creating that stakeholder bench as a customer, is the voice of your actual customers. To Asim's point, you all can get in the room and get to 70% of what you think the vision, the path to go. But who's speaking on behalf of your customer? There's been situations post migration, we're done, we're there. None of our customers are actually using this.
There were some assumptions along the way,
Exactly.
and those assumptions came on your behalf versus the customers, and the customers are like, we're not really using this. So wait, we spent 2 years doing this?
Yeah, you built it and they didn't.
They didn't come. And that's overlooked. And if you can knock that out up front, even dedicate a person to just get that information, that's vital. Because we can have the greatest bench ever, but if we're marching towards the wrong North Star, not working backwards from your customers, it's not going to.
I love how you threw the Amazonian thing. They're working backwards. Awesome. I got to touch on a couple of things that you mentioned. First of all, the skills, the technical plan, the dreamers. But the very first thing in your conversation was the executive buy-in. No matter what program or process you're trying to implement, the executive buy-in is like top thing. Nobody else, your management, everything coming top down from them is actually going to happen without it.
Thanks.
Billy, when you go into a conversation, when you start a new process or project, maybe with CDW thing, is that like the very first question? Are the executives bought into this? Because if they're not, the top down, the people are not going to do it?
100%. I see my relationship as a house. That foundation. Without the foundation, without someone that's blessing the blueprint, what do you have? Yep. You can have everything that you want, but if that foundation, that clearance is not there, and I love the way you put it, the dreamers, and I kind of see it as an artist, and you provide everything that they need to just paint. But if they have to go out and curate all these things in order to do that, you limit flow. Like, hey, I got to do this. Hey, it's like, I can't create. I'm not in the right space to do so. And it's forced and it's not what it could actually be. So yeah, you have to have executive buy-in. That's where this whole thing starts.
Well, we've been talking about obviously cloud adoptions, the effectiveness, managing it, the challenges and everything, but it's all, I want to say high level. Asim, do you have any real world experience or scenarios where customers have actually going through this and you've helped them adopt the cloud and manage it, and now they're successful?
Yeah, actually. So fortunately, having been at this for more than a decade, we have run into all permutations of success to deferred success and everything in between. One of my favorite customers, and the story, because it did take some effort, is about a federal agency. They're in the business of helping people move around. Let's just say that. And they have a ton of sub-departments which have a lot of autonomy. And that's been their culture, and that's been successful for them. Now, we kind of walked in and found out that some departments, given that they're federated, have a lot of autonomy. Some departments had gone ahead and had started using AWS a few years ago. And there were some smaller departments that were looking at the central IT and saying, central IT was our sponsor in this whole affair. And so smaller departments were looking at central IT and saying, well, provide us patterns because we would love to get to the cloud ourselves, but we don't want to do it unassisted, right? So you had folks that had already gone in, and those multiple, sub-departments were doing things their own way, each their own way, might I add. So it was a lot of fun. Again, passion and engineering got ahead of strategy and execution. And I'm an engineer, so I get it. I got to hold myself back at times. getting better at it with some experience.
Reps.
Exactly. But so you have this spread, right? You have folks that are pushing and saying, hey, we want to move forward, but give us direction, central IT, right? You have folks that have they're like, hey, we got this sorted out. All is well, don't bug us. And central IT is like, well, there's some visibility and security requirements that we all need to be, you know, ensuring that that flows back and forth. So maybe not, maybe all is not quite what it should be. So, but then central IT is, because they took their time, they were kind of coming from behind now, and they were not leading the conversation. So these folks had to be convinced, who had already moved forward, saying, we've succeeded. What are you here to talk about now? Why are you here now? And then there were the skeptics, as there always are, like, well, we've never done it this way, and this Steam is the solution, and nothing else can ever replace that. Forgetting those for a minute, how do you find balance between all of these? How do you, because central IT's mission is, well, obviously we need to provide the best patterns and the most prudent guardrails for the sub departments that haven't adopted yet, and that's easy because there are guidelines available from government, there are guidelines available from industry. We ensure that they are matched to the needs and requirements here at this agency, and off we go. These other folks who are running their own environments, how do we bring them into the fold? So then we started with it took some, frankly, it took like diplomatic efforts. This was a very interesting technical problem. How do you bring order to this herd now when one is not like the other, but you kind of want to bring them back without disrupting operations and passion? Because if you tell people too many things too soon, you take away their autonomy, you lose hearts, and that's a cost you can't recover from that. So we basically started building guardrails around the perimeter for them and saying, guys, how about we give you secure perimeters, and you continue to live internally just as you always did. We'll fortify your walls and have guardians on them, so to speak, right? So we'll take that pain over from you one at a time, and you keep doing things amorphously as you always did in the middle. And then we slowly started bringing standards and offerings for them to say, adopt this at your next upgrade, adopt this at your next refresh, right? And we showed them value on why they want to do this, what pain will it take away from them. And it was a gradual process of bringing all of this, this basically flying plane, because we were literally upgrading this plane as it was in flight, and multiple, this like flotilla almost, we're upgrading all of these and building this this caravan in air. That was very exciting from a value prop and a customer pain point perspective, to making it all a coherent whole, where central IT had the control and security visibility and finops visibility that they needed, right? And then the sub departments, they maintained their independence, and now they were in actually better state, because certain undifferentiated things, because remember, even with once you move to the cloud as a data center, you got to keep moving up that value chain and keep removing undifferentiated services over time, handing them off to the cloud infrastructure. So then we were able to do some of that for them, show them, and they came along. So it was very gratifying to see this herd of cats, and I love cats, come together and actually be happy.
Yeah. And John, I got to be the first one. We salute you and the individuals behind the scenes, because that's one of the beauties of working in public sector, is that the impact, all those hours impact the everyday person. And when you hear about just some of these government entities, the adjective that comes to mind automatically is slow. I'm having a moment of just transparency. I hate paperwork, like with a passion. My dentist yells at me all the time. And I'm one of the nerds that come in when something is seamless, automated, saves me time. I'm in there asking questions. What platform? Like, what did you, and they're like, I don't know, Billy. It's faster. So that's one of the things, like just the output, like you asked earlier, some of the great moments, like, does it work? And when it does, it benefits everyone. Like I recently had to get my my license updated. I was in and out in 15 minutes. Like we're only getting exactly. We're only getting started, you know? So it's like and that's the thing that we want to change. And as they're embracing cloud and getting situations like that together, because it's going to take some time. It's going to take everyone getting on the same page and having that plan, but the output impacts everyone.
Asim, you talked about a couple of the challenges. Obviously, one of the biggest one is change. People don't adopt really quick to change, especially from an outside company coming in and telling them this is some of the things we need to change. The other challenge that you ran across is that not to say you had shadow IT that deployed out to departments and AWS accounts out there, but what they did is they needed to move quickly. And they said, you know what? I can't wait for you guys to come along. I'm going to do my stuff. I'm going to be efficient. I'm going to build this because they were passionate about offering quicker services. Maybe somebody did the driver's license really quick, but you know, and then you had those people who built it and you're trying to wrangle in all these in and deploy out new environments for customers. So those seem to be like some of the top challenges that you came into with this customer.
Indeed. And I'm so glad that you actually captured the spirit I was speaking in, is that I actually support the passion and the drive that these folks had, the sub-agency technical folks, the teams who went ahead and said, hey, you're not keeping up. I got citizens to serve. Central IT, you're not keeping up, but my citizens, customers, they can't wait. So I'm just going to go do it because I need this done, right? I can't tell them that Central ID hasn't provided me standards yet, and I can't serve them. So I actually appreciate that. And that's exactly the passion you need to continue to harness. That's where you cannot like drop the hammer on these folks, because they are your most important advocates and your biggest asset. So it's actually sitting down with them and understanding why were they doing what they were doing. Let them have their say and let them vet us, because just as you also mentioned that we're coming in from outside. And it's like, guys, we're so my life's been spent in public sector, right? That's all I've done, really. So to actually let them vet us, grill us, frankly, have arrows fly, because, they need to be sure that who they're partnering with is the right partner.
Yes.
It's not just technical competence, it's actually fortitude as well. It's resolve as well. Like, will you be here when things aren't the prettiest? Because there always will be times when things aren't the prettiest before you actually turn them around. It's like, will you be here? So we actually welcome them to vet us, ensure that we're sound technically, because we are. We like knowing that. And having it be constantly evaluated. There is never any rest. We're always the barbarians at our own gates. We're never resting. Nothing is good enough. We're always pushing ourselves. But external validation, and then at that point, you have true comrades. You have allies, right? Now these folks now sitting in the agency, sitting at the public sector roles, they know that they can count on us. And now they will tell us openly what's not documented and what means a whole lot to them and means a whole lot to the success of the project. And you got to respect it, and you got to work with it and say, fine, we'll morph this need into this set of services at this stage, and you're leading, even if I'm implementing, so to speak, and ensure that they're part of the success. Because at the end of the day, as much as we can MSP and we can handle things for however long somebody needs, again, having a passionate team of owners that within the organization is crucial, and we are there to serve them, because they Billy, as you touched on, like who's speaking for the customer.
Yeah.
They, we of course we'll get into for longer, more involved projects. We'll get into human-centered design practices. We'll do all sorts of surveys, ensure that there is a need, there is frustration before, and then we'll use that as a metric to guide progress.
Yeah.
And then at the end, we'll measure it again objectively and say, okay, this is what the citizens got for their dollar, right? This measure of reduced frustration is what they got out of this. And that obviously means a whole bunch of people were using it, and now they continue to use it.
Right.
So, but we also want the insider's perspective, because the employees, so to speak, they are also part of our human-centered design experience studies to see what frustrations they are facing, right? So there is the end users and there are the employees, and figuring out what frustrations and what inefficiencies are they dealing with, quantifying them, not guessing, and then measuring them before, during, and after, and saying, this is what you got out of it, in addition to the technical innovation and a much better ever-evolving Lego set.
Yeah.
That's what we go for.
Yeah, and I love the way you said that, because usually with that output, that empowers, first of all, you're earning trust. You're looking at what you've done, and now you can really start thinking about the art of the possible and what we can do. It allows customers to think bigger, because when the customer is painting that vision for us, the capabilities and the options are endless.
I think one of the biggest things, as you touched on, is that the empathy that you have with the customer and really connecting with them and letting them ultimately drive some of the decisions, you have bigger buy-in to the adoption and less friction for that. Guys, I got to wrap things up here shortly. Before I do, B. Lee, my last question is, what piece of advice would you give those looking to maximize their cloud adoption?
Call your trusted advisor at CDW, who you've been talking to for the past
definitely was not queued up, but that was pretty good.
10 plus years, and ask them that same question. And don't be surprised on the end of that, you hear Asim's voice on the other side of it. It is literally as simple as that. And assessments, word on the street, CDW is giving out free assessments. So you actually get to leverage a person's like this time for an hour or so and just figure out line of sight.
Awesome. The same question to you. What piece of advice would you give those looking to maximize their cloud adoption?
So I will forget for a second who pays for my cat's food and my mortgage. And I will say, as a customer, because I've sat on that side of the table several times for years, I say as a customer, be ruthless when you vet your partners. Ask them beyond their tech. Yes, vet them aggressively on their technical capability, but ask them what makes them not just a service provider, but a partner. Do they have what it takes? Do they have any examples to provide? And are they actually going to share in the pains that you face as an organization, and not simply worry about, here is what I have to provide and you take it and it's good for you? No, tell me a little bit more. And the other thing I'll steal is from one of the Stoics. I think it was Seneca who said, if you don't know which way you're sailing, no wind is favorable.
That's a good sound piece of advice. Wow, B. Lee, thank you so much for joining me.
No, thank you for having us, John.
Awesome. The same. Thanks for doing this again with me, man.
My pleasure. Looking forward to many more.
Oh, definitely. Well, everybody, this has been maximizing the benefits and the value of your cloud initiatives. And some of those initiatives include cloud adoption, cloud efficiency, and effectiveness. This has been the Jon Myer Podcast. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and notify, because guess what? We're out of here.